Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I am a little bit excited about this video because this is something that we've been working on for a few months now, and it's finally ready, so I'm glad. I want to introduce to you a new product that we're going to be carrying on our store that my sweetheart Kaylin helped me to develop. We did a lot of research to find what would be the best components of this product, and so now we are introducing to you our new Cuffum binder blend. We call we got our wires crossed just a little bit on the label, and these only say Cuffum, and it's supposed to say Cuffum binder blend. So we want to kind of walk you through the process of why we chose the components that we did. I'll get into what's actually in Cuffum in just a few minutes, but I kind of, as I've gone through my health conditions and things, I've had to buy different binder blends, the GI detox blends and all, from different companies, and some of those things are really expensive. Now there's a reason why companies put certain blends together in a certain way. It's not just a haphazard throw a bunch of things in a capsule and take it. So this is what we call it, Cuffum binder blend, and Cuffum basically is a reference to handcuffs. If you don't do something, and I talk about this a lot in my videos on liver detox and parasite detox and all that, if you don't do something to bind toxins, they are reabsorbed in the bile, and they can actually concentrate when that bile is concentrated and become extremely toxic and make you very sick. I talk about this. It has to do with the different phases of detoxification in the video that I have called Love Your Liver. I put a link to that video in the description below. So I'm going to ask my husband to cover what binders actually are. Can you cover that?
Well, I'll just share a little bit of the information that I found interesting about binders, and Dana's got slides here that she'll go through with more information. But what I found interesting in researching for these binders of what we thought would be best to put in this blend was the fact that our body's pH has a lot to do with this, and that was fascinating and interesting to me. I never considered that before, but it all makes sense. And what I found basically was that almost all toxins are positively charged. And so knowing that, then we need to have most of our binders. Matter of fact, I think all of our binders are negatively charged, because we know basics of chemistry, opposites attract. And so therefore these negatively charged binders will attract to the positively charged toxins. And it's interesting to note too that I found that our body's pH, when we're more on the acidic side, that means the substances, the toxins, bacterias, and so forth, have become overrun or have grown to a point where it's brought on disease. And we know that disease thrives in an acidic environment. And so I found it very interesting that the pH has a lot to do, which we know, with our health, but I never correlated it necessarily myself personally to affecting the pH of the body. Just knowing that toxins are positively charged was enough for me that we needed to have negatively charged binders. But anyway, we carefully chose the binders that we felt were most effective for most of the toxins that we deal with today, and we'll go over that in more details as we move through this presentation.
So binders basically are soluble fibers in a nutshell, and of whatever form. Even your foods can somewhat act as a binder. There's certain foods that help to bind up bile fibers and things like that. So different of these substances have different affinity for different toxins, and this is why just activated charcoal or just bentonite clay is really in many circumstances not ideal. It can be helpful, but it may not be the very best that you can do. Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt made a statement, and honey, you found this statement for me. Can you read this for everybody?
Yeah. He stated that most psychiatric disorders, most neurological disorders, most chronic illnesses are not a failure of the genes. It is the number of toxins stored in the central nervous system and immune system that determines the fate of us humans. And we know that we live in a very toxic environment, in the air we breathe, the water that we drink, the foods. So it is important to understand that, you know, our genetics do have a part to play, but we need to make our focus upon these toxins that are within the body.
This is why we focus so much on toxins. We kind of related these physical toxins and the physical detox to the spiritual world. You know, if we're sick in our minds, we got brain fog, you can't really comprehend spiritual things. So this is why we believe this is so important for every one of us to consider. So moving on, my husband already talked about the polarity and the positive versus negative, but one thing that I didn't know and Kaylin found was that mold toxins not only carry a net positive charge, but sometimes they can have positive charge on one end and negative charge on the other. So you need totally different binders to really affect these things. And so we have included in the binder blend several different binders that actually have a strong affinity for mold toxins of many types. Okay, I want to take just a minute, and I talk about this in my video on activated charcoal. I have an older video, it's probably 10 years old, that I did on activated charcoal, and there is a difference between absorb and adsorb. What's the difference? If I take a sponge and I put it down in a bucket of water and I pull it up, and the water that's in that sponge can be easily squeezed out, it's going to start dripping out and can easily be squeezed out. That is absorb. It kind of takes it within itself and it can easily be removed from that. But if we're looking at adsorb, that is actually an electrostatic type of work, this polarity, these negative positive thing. It's actually at that electrostatic connection that is the way that these binders are actually working. So there is a difference between those two. And so I don't remember if we add that, but let's look at a few environmental and endotoxins that this blend will help to remove from the body. Want to read this?
Sure. There's quite a list of toxins, but we could go on all day trying to list them all, but we'll list the majority of the ones that we see that seem to be more typical with people with toxicity problems. And those are heavy metals, including aluminum, mercury, and lead. Mycotoxins from mold, which this is getting more and more recognition. People are realizing that they're having symptoms and not really understanding what the source of this is, and they're finding that mold is becoming more and more common with illnesses. Also biotoxins from Lyme and parasitic infections. Plastic particles, which, you know, what's not in plastic anymore. Pesticides, herbicides, volatile organic compounds, and again, just many, many more, but these just a few.
You know, you mentioned heavy metals, heavy metal toxicity. Many people have that these days, especially if you have dental amalgams and have had those removed. When I had a mouthful of mercury, and when I had those removed, the dentist just drilled them out, put some white stuff in there, and it was not done with any kind of safety mechanism. I mean, the dentist didn't even wear a mask. I didn't have a mask. I had no protection whatsoever. Lyme disease, and even I had Rocky Mountain spotted fever. The binder blends really helped me a lot, because these tick-borne diseases and things, they create a lot of what's called endotoxins, or internal toxins that your body itself is creating. In fact, you can even have mold growing in your gut. It's called SIFO, small intestinal fungal overgrowth. Even small intestinal bacterial overgrowth creates all of these endotoxins that you're basically poisoning yourself from the inside. And so these binder blends can really help to alleviate that issue. So bile is often reabsorbed because it's a little bit expensive metabolically to manufacture. And if the liver has dumped a bunch of toxins in the bile, and that goes into the colon, and then the liver is recirculating, you know, it wants to keep that bile, so it recycles it and reabsorbs it. If you don't do something to bind the toxins out of that bile, then they become concentrated and much more toxic. So this is why people have bile that really kind of looks like blackstrap molasses or worse, and then they start developing these stones in the gallbladder and stuff. And so it's just a whole vicious cycle. And again, I talk about that a lot in my video on livers, on Love Your Liver. So these binders actually handcuff those toxins so they can be eliminated in the colon and not reabsorbed with the bile. So what is actually in cuffum? We're going to talk about that now. Here's a picture of the label of cuffum, and these are the ingredients. Some of them are in lesser amounts than others. It's a proprietary blend. Diatomaceous earth, Apple Pectin, which is organic, sodium bentonite, aloe vera powder, okra extract, humic acid powder, chlorella, and activated charcoal. And I thought it would be good to just kind of run down a little bit with each one of these and just kind of give you an idea of what each one of these is and what it is good for. So you did a lot of the research on this, so maybe you could share this first one on diatomaceous earth.
Sure. Well, diatomaceous earth is from diatoms, and it's the shell which is broken down into powder. It is negatively charged and has a pH of about 8.5, so it is alkalinizing. And this is what I found so fascinating. Now, we understand that disease thrives in an acidic environment. And so when you look at something as diatomaceous earth, which is quite high with 8.5 in pH scale, you can see that would help reestablish homeostasis or optimum pH within the body. And it does a great job at this, diatomaceous earth. And it will not absorb beneficial bacteria, which I thought was important too, because to understand, bad bacteria is positively charged and diatomaceous earth is negatively charged, so it will bind that bad bacteria. And what's interesting is that good bacteria is negatively charged or neutral. And so a lot of our binders, or all of our binders, are negatively charged, so they will have no effect upon good bacteria, so thus creating an environment of the proper pH in the body, eliminating the environment for disease, not just absorbing the toxins. That's why I found this so fascinating with diatomaceous earth and these other binders. But it also says it's effective to bind bacteria, fungi, parasites, and heavy metals. So it has a pretty broad range of effectiveness with a lot of toxins.
You know, this is just a little bit off topic, but you may have heard of, and I have a video on our AMD foot detox bath. And the way that it works is by putting an electrical charge into the water, and you can either program it to do negative or positive, and that is actually how that foot bath works as well, by pulling the particles from the body that are the wrong charge out through the feet. So that's a pretty interesting thing to me. I just happened to think about that as we were doing all this research. So the next ingredient is Apple Pectin, and it is organic. Fruit pectins in general are very good to bind heavy metals. A lot of practitioners use that. But additionally, apple pectin is very soothing to the GI tract, and it can aid in situations where there's either diarrhea or constipation. Many binders, like activated charcoal and even to a lesser extent bentonite clay can be very constipating, and some of them can even be a little irritating to the GI tract. And so we wanted to include some things that kind of would help to ameliorate the situation with constipation and irritation and all that. So that's kind of the key feature of some of these components, but the beauty is that they are also binders. So pectin can also, this is interesting, could help to control diabetes, and it can also help to bring down cholesterol levels that are too high. So the next one is sodium bentonite.
Yeah, I'll just share a few facts with you. And I just want to comment too, we understand that the body does a great job at healing itself and trying to maintain homeostasis, but we believe that in the world we're living in now, it's so toxic that it needs all the help that it can get. So that's why we're not against supplements to an extent, or using these binders. But sodium bentonite, it's negatively charged and can absorb up to 10 times its weight in water, and it can also adsorb, so it does both absorb and adsorb. It's effective to help eliminate aflatoxins and gliotoxins, and it aids in elimination of aluminum, mercury, and lead. And these are some very prominent heavy metals that people have to address. Sources recommend not using a metal spoon with bentonite, because when the metal spoon comes into contact with this clay, it changes the polarity of it to positive, so it can affect its negative charge to attract the positively charged toxins. So we need to be careful not to use metal with bentonite clay.
Do you think that that's kind of across the board with these?
I don't think so. In my research, I didn't find that with any substance but the clay, the bentonite clay.
Okay, interesting. The next one is aloe vera powder, and again, this is one of those that's there to kind of help soothe things and move things. So that's why it's there. But it's also, I believe, didn't we research and find, I don't remember which things aloe vera actually binds to, but I believe it also had binding. But the reason that we put it in our blend was for the soothing and the moving effect that it has. So the next one is okra powder. Now, I'm from the South. Some of y'all don't like our slimy okra, but this is not slimy. It's a powder. So okra is actually a fantastic binder to mycotoxins, and that's why it's in our blend. Many practitioners who are working with clients who have mold toxicity are now using and recommending, especially for those clients who really don't want to use medications. They're recommending the use of okra powder. So okra powder also is very high in vitamin C. It's also antioxidant, and it can bind free radicals because it's of this antioxidant property.
Too, one of the nice things too, we're trying to find things that would support the immune system. Of course, it contains vitamin C, so this is a good substance as well to boost and support our immune system.
Also, when okra powder gets wet, when you mix it with water, it turns to kind of like slippery elm in a way, like a goo. So it's very, very soothing to the GI tract. It has that mucilaginous property, like the slimy okra most of y'all don't like. So that's really helpful to soothe and protect the GI tract. So that is a win-win right there with okra powder. I'll do the humic acid. It is negatively charged, of course. What humic acid is, it looks very much like activated charcoal. In fact, if I put a spoonful of humic acid powder and a spoonful of charcoal, you might not notice a difference. I probably would be able to tell a difference, because the humic acid powder is much finer than charcoal powder is. But it was carbonaceous material that, trees and plants and stuff like that and animals that were buried, but not as deep and under as much pressure or heat as coal. So it didn't become coal, it became this rich, mineral-rich dirt, basically, is what humic acid powder is. And fulvic acid is a component of humic. So by putting the humic acid powder in our blend, not only are you getting the benefit of the humic, but also a little bit, I think it's like 10% fulvic. So the beauty of these is they're extremely high in minerals. And so some of these binders can, over time, if they're taken long term, can actually bind out some of your nutrients, your micronutrients and stuff. So the beauty of some of these things that we put into the blend are, and one I'm going to let Kaylin talk about. I think it's next. I don't remember. We'll see. Anyway, these are actually foods that nourish the body. So humic acid powder has a tremendous binding capacity to toxins, but it also gives some minerals, also because it does contain that fulvic component. Now, this one can be a little bit a stimulant to the immune system. So those who have autoimmune disease may not be able to take this as long term as someone else might be able to. So that's something to consider right there. So yes, the next one is yours, Chlorella.
Chlorella, this one I like because there's so much more to it than just being a binder. It contains omega-3 fatty acids as well. And it's considered actually a superfood because it's loaded with nutrients too. And so it's just, I think it's fabulous when you can get other properties than just binding properties, but it is excellent at binding heavy metals. This one is known by a lot of people for heavy metal binding, but it also binds with mycotoxins, especially the aflatoxins and pesticides, herbicides, and VOCs. So this one, to me, is one too that can be taken long term. There's no side effects. It won't bind other nutrients like some of these other binders that we have will.
We really struggled with putting this one in there, not because it isn't good, but because of the stimulating effect to the immune system. We already had the humic minerals in there. We didn't want to overstimulate the immune system, but I think that the balance that we have in there will probably be pretty good. I do have autoimmune disease and I use this frequently, and I haven't had any issues with using it. I actually have noticed great benefit with taking this. It's been very effective for me. So the final one is activated charcoal. I'll let you do that one. I've been talking a lot.
Yeah, that's okay. But what can you say about activated charcoal? Most people are familiar with it and they're comfortable with it, so we're not going to spend too much time on it because it's been proven. They use it in emergency rooms whenever they go in with drug overdoses or food poisoning. They bring on charcoal, and it is good at adsorbing and absorbing. But again, it's strongly negatively charged. And it's good at binding okra toxins, aflatoxins, which I think is good because we're seeing an increase with people with issues with mold issues, with mycotoxin issues. And so this is good to understand. And just a fact that I like to share about activated charcoal is 1 teaspoon of activated charcoal has about the same surface area as a football field. To me,
that's pretty incredible.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take a whole lot of charcoal to be an effective binder.
Right. One other thing that I want to point out is activated charcoal has been used to bind trichothecenes. And if you've never heard of the T2 mycotoxins, they have been used in biological warfare. So many of the people who have these mycotoxins are acutely or chronically ill. I mean, just incredibly ill people. And we are finding more and more that a lot of things that are mysterious illnesses are actually mycotoxins, mold toxicity. So that's about it that we wanted to share. We just wanted to introduce this new product to you. We are excited because these don't have the full label on them. These will be on sale until they're gone. When we get our new label, they're going to be back at the regular price. Thus far, all of our, this has 300 capsules. They are vegetarian capsules, just like everything else on our store. We have it in the 300 bags because that's the most economical amount to sell it in. All of our bags at this juncture of 300 capsules are $35, but the introductory price on this, because the label is not full, is going to be $30 until these are gone. When we get our new ones, then we'll put it to the regular price. So consider it on sale as we launch this new product. I'm excited.
I am too. I think it's going to be a great benefit to many people, and it's very economical. And it has such a nice broad range of different binders that we think that it's going to be a very effective binder for many things. So
Yes.
we look
And there
forward
are
to it.
other binders that we could have chosen from to put in here, and we really tried to study carefully and research and just come to the best conclusions that we could. So at any rate, I think that's about it, and we will wrap it up and see you on the next video. Bye bye.